The face of Christianity in America and around the world is changing with each generation. As Christian churches grow in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, many question the future role of the churches in North America. Political pundits debate the role of religion and churches in public life and policy. The changing influence of the churches and religion is reflected in schools and universities established to train the next generation of leaders. Theological seminaries, schools training future church leaders, will play a major role in shaping the influence of churches.
Well, in general, in seminary, we're trying to prepare different people for different kinds of Christian service in the church, in other organizations, and numbers of them who will eventually go overseas. And we're helping them, I think, to understand both the depth and the breadth of the gospel, and giving them tools that will enable them to continue to do that lifelong.
When it comes to the doctrine of salvation within the Christian church, there are generally two systems of theology. One of those, referred to as the doctrines of grace, is also known as Calvinism, after the 16th century French theologian John Calvin, who argued for this belief system against other views.
I think one of the distinctives of the Calvinistic view of salvation is that there are two things we need to grasp, and we cannot grasp the second unless we appreciate the first. And the first is the depth of our sin. Calvinists spoke about total depravity, not necessarily meaning we are as bad as we might be, but that there's no part of our lives that isn't tainted by our sinfulness, and that goes deep down into our personal being. And the other thing was, of course, the marvels of God's grace.
Calvinists have played significant roles throughout history in politics and various positions of leadership. Our nation's founders, who landed in New England on the Mayflower, were largely Calvinists, including John Winthrop, the first governor of Massachusetts. Jonathan Edwards, the father of the Great Awakening, was president of Princeton University for a short time before his death. In fact, many of the Ivy League schools were founded by Puritan Calvinists, including Harvard and Yale, to be training grounds for ministers.
Universally, the great educators, administrators that founded the origin of our universities and colleges were Calvinist people. It is the Calvinist worldview that was dominant in the origins of the country, certainly through the mid-19th century.
Today, a new generation of Calvinism, still based on the biblical doctrines of grace and the principles laid out by Calvin in his famed Institutes of the Christian Religion, is a growing American religious movement. It has taken hold among 20 to 30-year-old theologically reformed, creative, and enterprising students attending seminary to prepare for starting and pastoring churches across the country.
My generation is seeking for relevance, seeking for truth. It's the phrase, keep it real. And so I believe Reformed theology keeps it real in a sense, because it speaks directly to the pain of life. It speaks directly to the issues and problems that people have with God, that people have with sin, that people have with just how do you live in a world that has so many options. So I think Reformed theology addresses the relevance of my generation.
One of the stated purposes of Redeemer Seminary, based in Dallas, Texas, with additional campuses in Austin and Houston, is to provide for churches that share the seminary's commitment and heritage, ministers and others who understand contemporary culture and are able to intelligently and faithfully defend and proclaim the Christian faith, and to oppose heresy and unbelief.
Redeemer Seminary stands in the tradition of institutions established by these early pilgrims and those who came to America to establish a place where they could worship freely according to their conscience as that stood under the Word of God. And Redeemer Seminary now stands as an institution established to continue that tradition of education here in Texas and in the Southwest and to the world, so that the church, as it grows, as it moves forward, will be equipped with leaders who can read and interpret the original scriptures as they come in the Greek and the Hebrew to the generation to which they minister in the future.
I was a pre-med student in college and decided that the church is where I wanted to spend my life. And so, as early as the age of 19, felt called to the ministry.
For a student to begin to understand whether he or she should go to seminary, I believe they would need to evaluate themselves in light of what they know to be true about themselves in terms of their own gifting, how that gifting is affirmed or not by other people, what it is that is their passion and their desire, what do they want to do with their lives, what opportunities are made available to them for that end, and how they assess the larger needs in the world.
Redeemer Seminary stands in a tradition of scholarship and Calvinist theology with an emphasis on the formation of pastors. Its focus is on building faculty-student relationships to create a learning environment built on Christ-like community and fellowship, and to come alongside and serve the life of the local church.
Every student who comes to our institution is going to be challenged to read the Word of God and to test everything that they hear in our classes and discern whether or not they think that is in fact in agreement with the Word of God. So our authority, to which we always appeal as our final authority, is the Bible.
Redeemer Seminary is a learning community dedicated to supporting the church in preparing disciples of Jesus Christ for ordained and non-ordained gospel ministry through study of His Word, formation into His likeness, and training in His church's mission to the world, all to the glory of God. To learn more about Redeemer Seminary and its mission, visit redeemerseminary.org.